Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, happy Friday to you. It's 6 o'clock. I am, of course, Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs and Co, the show where we'll get into some of the stories that have got you talking today. The green levies on energy bills, we talk about those often. Many of us are hoping that they will go. But Boris Johnson says no, they are here to stay. What do you think to this? Is he right? Is now the time to be putting green levies on our bills? And Co-op, they've got rid of the use-by dates on their yogurts. Well, that might be great if you've got a nice sense of smell and you can pick your product up and have a good sniff and is it at its best? Yes, I'll eat it. But what about those of us like me that don't have a sense of smell? How do we use our common sense when it comes to when food is at its best? And by the way, this is all about wastage of food. This whole cost of living. Do you change the way that you live? Are you changing the way that you eat? Any other things in your life that you're making changes to help you get by? I'm fascinated to hear your thoughts on that. And Welsh civil servants, this one makes me chuckle, I don't know why, they're going to be getting a weekly wellness hour to help with their mental health. But I'm a bit confused by this, because don't people get a lunch hour every day to do with what they choose? Can't that be their, weekly, daily moment of pause and reflection every day? Or do we need an extra one every week? What do you think? Do you have one where you work? Do you have mindfulness in your own life anyway, never mind at work? And male domestic violence. Do you think this topic is taken seriously? A mum to a boy that was killed by his girlfriend says it absolutely is not taken as seriously as it should be. Let's have a look at all of that, shall we? But first, let's look at the latest news headlines.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister is confident he'll still be in his job later this year and says the public wants the government to focus on other issues. However, Conservative MP Tobias Ellwood says there's an absence of discipline and leadership in Downing Street. MPs have ordered an investigation into whether the Prime Minister misled Parliament over COVID breaches. Defence Minister Leo Doherty says the Partygate story is fizzling out.
In my view, it's pretty much done and dusted in the sense that the Prime Minister's apologised for the fixed penalty notice he received. In my opinion, I regard that as matter closed. I really want to see him being able to get on with the job. That's what my constituents want to see, and I think actually, despite the protestations in the media, I think that's what, by and large, the vast majority of people in the country want to see.
Well, meanwhile, the Prime Minister has agreed a new partnership with India, which he says will enable the country to strengthen its own defence sector. Speaking from New Delhi, Boris Johnson said he wants to get a post-Brexit trade deal done by Diwali in October. He said a free trade deal would allow Delhi to lift tariffs on British machinery, and in turn, the UK could lift tariffs on Indian rice and textiles.
So today, we've agreed a new and expanded defence and security partnership, a decades-long commitment that will not only forge tighter bonds between us, but support your goal, Narendra, of Make in India. We've agreed to work together to meet new threats across land, sea, air, space and cyber.
Boris Johnson there. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres is visiting President Putin in Moscow on Monday. It comes after the UN said there is growing evidence of war crimes, with Russian troops indiscriminately bombing populated areas, killing civilians and wrecking hospitals. Meanwhile, the World Bank estimates that the war in Ukraine has caused $60 billion worth of damage to buildings. President Volodymyr Zelensky says his country needs $7 billion a month to make up for economic losses.
The funds from the war tax should be used to help Ukraine, to rebuild everything that Russia has destroyed in the war. And if this tax is applied to other aggressors, the funds should be directed to the victims of the war. Every country in the world needs to prepare now for the possible complete severance of relations with Russia. No one should depend on the political whims of the leaders of that country.
President Zelensky. Russia's defense ministry says its military has hit dozens of targets in Ukraine's Donetsk and Kharkiv regions today. Kharkiv's emergency services say one person was killed, 6 wounded from a missile strike. Boris Johnson has announced that the British Embassy in Kiev will reopen next week. The UK temporarily relocated its consulate to Lviv in February, days before Russia invaded Ukraine. The Prime Minister says it's reopening in the Ukrainian capital after the extraordinary fortitude and the success of President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people. Madeleine McCann's parents have welcomed the news that a German national linked to her disappearance has been identified as a formal suspect by Portuguese authorities. In 2020, German police said they were investigating a man known as Christian Bruckner in connection with the case. The 3-year-old disappeared during a family holiday in Praia da Luz in 2007. President Macron says the choice facing French voters is similar to when US voters elected Donald Trump. Earlier, his opponent, Marine Le Pen, was out campaigning in the north of the country. She says the public must choose between Macron or France. President Macron accuses Miss Le Pen of being far-right and says her solutions are not viable. Opinion polls currently put Mr Macron ahead on over 55% of the vote. And coronavirus infection levels have fallen across the UK for the first time this year. The figures from the Office for National Statistics suggest that the recent surge in the Omicron BA2 variant has now peaked. 3.8 million people are still estimated to have the virus in the UK, and deaths involving COVID are continuing to rise, but they remain well below numbers seen during the first and second waves of the pandemic. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now let's get back to Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that. I've got to say, one of the favourite parts of mine of this show is the goings-on in the break and during the news headlines there. We hear them getting read and we can hear what's being said. The commentary that I get from some of my panel makes me smile every day, so it does. Today, joining me, Daniel Moylan, who's the former advisor to Boris Johnson, now the Tory life peer in the House of Lords, Ali Mirage, the columnist at The Article and founder of the Contrarian Prize, and James Bloodworth, author of Scam Story, Late for Work. One of these, oh, by the way, I just realised, all men. 3 men. Man, you can be like my Man Fridays.
Yes.
Is that a compliment or
Yeah,
not? I'm not
you're
sure.
out.
Is it? I don't know. Yeah, one of them, the commentary I was getting, and I won't say which one during the headlines, was making me chuckle, including, look at the lighting on Boris Johnson. We was getting comments there. Did you see Boris Johnson's up lighting? What did you think to that? And scams, by the way, James. Did you notice today? I'm going very off topic, by the way, because I'm actually supposed to be... In fact, sorry, I forget about you at home, because what I normally say at this point, I'm getting so into, when I saw the word scam there, I'm going off topic, because... I'll tell you for why, actually. Because I found out today I'm a victim of scamming, and it's infuriated me. It made me late for work today because I was on the phone to the police all about some identity fraud that I've experienced. They're getting very sophisticated these days, these scammers, aren't they, James?
They've stolen your money, is that what's happened?
Well, they've done quite a few things, yeah. I won't get into the nuts and bolts of it, I'll tell you off air, because these days I'm so frightened about even getting into the nitty-gritty of that in case people are watching and, you know, taking notes and all the rest of it. But it's really no laughing matter, these scams that's going on, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, I didn't write that book about scams that was just read out on the auto cue, but
oh, well, whose book
I fully
that,
agree.
then?
It sounds like a book
Hang
I
on.
enjoy.
Whose book?
It wasn't my book.
Oh, right. Oh, sorry. Do you know, this is the wheels are falling off. You can tell that it's Friday. Was you just sitting there politely nodding along, saying, yeah, that sounds like a good book, Michelle. Yeah. I've just introduced James Bloodworth as the author of a book called Scam Story, Late for Work. And actually, I've just realised what it was. My producer has just done a little note to self there, because I was whinging about my scam story and being late for work. Oh, I don't know. Sometimes, do you know have you ever had one of those days, ladies and gentlemen at home, where you just want to go home and start again? Anyway, you know the drill on Dewbs and Co, don't you? It's not just about us and our thoughts, even if mine are some random thoughts tonight. It's about you at home as well, and yours. What is on your mind tonight? GB Views at gbnews.uk. You can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GBNews. Don't forget, if you haven't already, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got an app. We're on the radio. We're all across social media. We're everywhere. So good evening to you, wherever you are. Now, I'm supposed to be talking about green taxes, and I will in just a second, but I want to go off topic again. Ali, French elections this weekend. It's going to be quite an important one, isn't it? Lots of eyes on what's going to happen there. The impact across Europe will be seismic if Le Pen gets in. Is she going to?
Well, at the moment, Michelle, it looks like the polls are pointing towards Macron, but he shouldn't be complacent. In the early part of the campaign, he hardly campaigned at all. He was more busy talking about foreign affairs and other things rather than being on the campaign trail. I think the key thing is that if you look at the traditional parties of both left and right, they've been really squeezed. I mean, they've been just completely squeezed out of the picture. You've now got Le Pen, who's built up her... she's called it the National Rally now. It used to be called the National Front. She's sort of given a lot more of a friendly approach. And she talks about her love for cats and gardening. She didn't lose her temper the other day on the presidential debate. So she's improved her style. I think at the moment it still looks like Macron's going to do it. But there are two competing visions in France between Macron's liberalist view of the world and Le Pen's much more nationalist France first view. And that's what's going to be on offer for voters on Sunday. I think he'll probably win, but I don't think they can be complacent. And it really depends where Mélenchon's votes go. He got 20% in the first round, over 20%. Where will those votes go?
And as he, because when he didn't get through on the first round, he stopped short at that point of telling his voters to go to Macron. Has he subsequently come out and told them to go there or not?
No, and I think that we'll have to wait and see. Look, the polls are saying it's going to be 55-45. We know the polls can be very wrong. And I think that if you actually just take a step back for a second and look at Le Pen compared to where her father was, a pretty much marginal figure, laughed at in France for a long time, and look at where she is. The fact that she's even being talked about getting 45% of the vote at this point is a very sobering thought, even if she doesn't win.
I've got to make a confession. Part of me wouldn't mind Le Pen winning, just as a wake-up call, I think, to a few in Europe.
Well, how many more do they need, Michelle? They had Brexit, they had Trump. I mean, how many more make-up calls do the establishment need?
This is a very good question. I don't know, actually. In fact, what I do know is that I'm going massively off topic. Sorry, Mr. Producer. I should be following my script and doing what I told you I'd be doing, which is green topics, green taxes, should I say. What's going on with me today? It's Friday, I think. That's what it is. Green taxes, where do you stand on these? They are, for some, a controversial subject, aren't they, in the UK after all of the increases in energy costs? And by the way, we've not seen the end of them yet. We've got another rise potentially coming in October as well. The taxes and levies cost us around £160 a year. They're added, of course, to our gas and electricity bills. Now, Boris Johnson has been asked about this, some hoping that he was going to get rid or press pause or anything. I've got to say, he's not having any of that. He's doubled down. They are apparently here to stay. James Bloodworth, what do you make of this? Should they still be on these bills?
Yes, I think so, because I think over the long term, moving the economy towards renewables is the only way we're going to not have a reliance on the gas, what the gas price is. So the reason that gas prices have gone up and Britain is dependent on gas, it doesn't matter that it's from Russia, it's the price on the world market has gone up. And the only way we'll be able to not be subject to the vicissitudes of that price anymore is to move to renewables. I think I think it would be a very short-term solution to just scrap those. I think, for example, you could not increase national insurance contributions. This recent rise.
On that.
Yeah, I think that would be just not introducing that instead. That would help people more with the cost of living crisis than doing some short-term solution such as getting rid of the green levy.
See, Ali, we are in unprecedented times now when it comes to the increases on piece, because it's not just energy, it's going to be pretty much everything. Mobile phones, council taxes, foods, your services that you're going to go and have done, energy, everything. So now is the time, even if you are the most, environmentally conscious person, terrified of climate change, you can't deny that people's here and now is getting harder. I personally think Boris Johnson should press pause for a year on the green agenda when it comes to these levies. Do you agree or not?
No, I don't agree. And
Get out.
I do understand how difficult it is for people out there. It's extraordinarily hard right now for a lot of people. You've seen energy bills go up by about £700. You see them now talk about them going up in October at the next price cap review of another £1,000. Really, really punitive charges. And you're right, it's not just energy, it's across the board. So it's a really, really tough time for people. But just to James's point, you saw all of those people protesting at COP26 and this whole desire amongst a large part of the populace to try and move to this more green agenda on two fronts. One, for decarbonisation, to green the economy, but also on the security of energy supply front as well. So we're not exposed to the markets in the same way. I mean, we're less exposed to, for example, Russia than a lot of our European counterparts. But look, there are issues with green energy as well. It's very intermittent. You have to invest in battery storage, carbon capture and storage, hydrogen, these new technologies as well. Where is that money going to come from? There's no silver bullet here, Michelle. What the government should be doing is helping the poorest in society. Yes, the rest of us, unfortunately, are going to have to suck this up, tighten our belts, and have a tough time.
What's your cut-off point then? Because when you're saying help the poorest in society, who's that? Where's your cut-off?
Well, look, the very poorest in society, people on benefits, people at the lower end of the spectrum should be helped. The rest of us are going to have to try and cut back. It is a very, very difficult time. We've just been through 2 years of COVID.
Well, benefits are rising 3.1%, aren't they? Many in work are not getting a 3.1% pay rise.
I know, but we've just been through 400 billion of borrowing on the back of COVID. There is no magic money tree. The only way governments raise money is in two ways. They either tax you or they borrow. Sunak does not want to borrow because interest rates are going up. It puts another 1% increase on in interest rates, put another 20 billion of debt service costs on government debt. So that's not really practical.
So the green levy should be here to stay. Daniel Moylan.
Well, I'm a supporter of the government and I've been willing to be tolerant towards it and supportive of its green agenda. But I think now the situation has completely changed. I think there is time for a major reassessment about how this works. The fact is that the whole green subsidy thing has enriched a very small number of people who got in early, who are still out there bleating for subsidies. That shouldn't be going on. I think that the green jobs that we were promised, the huge number of green jobs that would come, we don't see any of those. and most of these windmills and so forth, they're manufactured overseas anyway, and we're not creating any green jobs.
Well, hang on, because in Hull, where I'm from, we have Siemens. They do wind turbine stuff there.
Yeah, no, there are some, but a lot of it comes in from abroad. We're not seeing enough green jobs coming out of this, which is what we were promised. And it's undoubtedly the case that, you know, the argument we've heard it for 20 years now, is that all you have to do is wait, and the cost of wind is going to fall. The cost of solar is going to fall. It's all going to become cheaper and cheaper. There won't be any need for subsidies. There won't be any need for levies. Well, if that's true, why are we still talking about having green levies on our bills? It's becoming a scam. And what you need, and Boris is a very sensible and mature figure. He needs to sit down and just think, is this the best way of achieving what we want to achieve? And is this the best timetable to be doing it on? Because at the moment, it's really hurting. The whole thing has changed in the last couple of months. Security of supply is more important than ever. Yeah. And having a load of windmills that don't blow when the wind isn't blowing, don't turn when the wind isn't blowing, is not giving us security of supply. We need gas in there. We have our own gas sources in the North Sea. We even have coal underground, some of which we should be mining. And there's the possibility of fracking.
You're really calling for coal mining?
We are an energy resort. We need some coal, if only to carry on with the steel industry. And we've actually got to get, because we need the coke for that. And we've got to get coal mining going again, even if only for the steel industry. Or do you want it imported? We can import the coal, because that's the only way you can make steel. So I just really think that you've got to think this through again. What is it you're trying to achieve? I'm not knocking the goal.
Well,
what are you trying to achieve?
Two things.
Is this the best way of doing it? Because it has become a scam. And the people who are paying for the scam are the ordinary people with energy bills. And it's no good sitting there, I'm sorry, Ali, and saying, let them eat it up. That's just not going to work.
But look, Daniel, there are two issues which I think should drive energy strategy, as Dieter Helm of Oxford has said. One is decarbonisation of the economy, and second is security of supply. You're quite right on that front. But you talk about the fact that the price of wind hasn't come down on the back of subsidies. It has. It's become a lot more economic. When you're a financial investor and you're looking to whether to invest in emerging technologies where there's no proven market yet, you do need government subsidy to get it off the ground. It's the same with electric vehicle charging.
Do you? Did they need that for the railways in the 1820s? Did they need government subsidies to build railways? Every single railway in this country within the 19th century was built by the private sector with no government subsidy.
But the railway still has massive subsidies.
They have now, but
you can't let a railway go down
what he's saying,
what
Ali is saying is a different point. What Ali is saying is that in order to get the investment off the ground in the first place, you've got to have government subsidy. Yeah. There are lots of examples of where that didn't actually happen.
But it's not proven technology.
It's because, well, the railways weren't proven technology when they started them. If you, what you're doing is you're thinking into a subsidy mindset. Nothing can happen. There's no role for the private sector in innovation in this country, not at all. Innovation always has to come from the government. And one of the problems is the government has bought into that as well. And of course, they don't have the money to do it.
But Daniel, I'm sorry, I disagree.
What are they going to innovate?
Look, I was chairing one of the biggest infrastructure summits in the world in Berlin just a few weeks ago. There's a massive desire. There was $136 billion raised last year from infrastructure investors wanting to invest in infrastructure.
In subsidies.
No, not
wanting
just subsidies.
To invest in regulated asset
You look at
bases,
battery storage.
Wanting to invest in to de-risk their investment by passing it on to the
Daniel,
government.
you've got to be
That's
practical.
What they're looking for.
If you want to crowd in at scale with electric vehicle charging points, with battery storage, with new technologies in carbon capture, etc., you do need the government to act as an enabler to get these private investors to get a return.
Why?
Because they need to make money. They need to make a return, otherwise they won't invest.
Except you need a government that puts a legislative and regulatory framework in place in which they can operate and they understand how they're working. Fully understand that. They did that with the railways too. But I do not understand why in something that really ought to be a no-brainer, which is if you're going to have electric vehicles, you're going to need charging points.
Well, at what price? What price does the investor make?
Why?
What is the return?
That's not the starting point. That isn't the starting point.
You're a conservative, the party of entrepreneurs.
The investor is meant to be taking risk. You're not looking at entrepreneurs.
For a profit.
You're looking at rent seekers. People who are able to say, oh, look, if I get in on that subsidy, I've got a guaranteed 5%
rent seeking is different. Rent seeking
that suits me tremendously well.
Daniel,
there's
rent
no
seeking...
risk. It's de-risking everything for the taxpayer. Is what you're 136 billion and everybody in in your conference was there to de-risk it.
Daniel, I respectfully disagree. Where you're talking about rent seeking occurs when you have a monopoly situation, for example, a utility or a gas network or an electricity network, which everyone in the country has to use because this is a monopoly situation. There you have excessive rent seeking if you don't have regulators capping prices, monitoring how much the private sector can make on returns, right? Fair enough. I understand that point. But when you're talking about new technologies where you need masses of investment to come in, hundreds of billions of pounds to invest, right? The government talks about its green plan and the energy security strategy that's just been announced. If you really want to mobilise at scale and not tinker around the edges, you need to incentivise private investors to come in.
So
and then over time...
Profit isn't enough incentive.
No, and then over time...
Profit isn't
They need to know how much money they're going to make.
What? No,
they need to build up a network.
Everybody who starts a business, Ali, would love to know how much money they're going to make. They really, really would.
It's not completely subsidising the whole thing. There is market risk involved.
People who a bit, yeah. People who actually start businesses take the risk they might not make any money. That's what starting a business is. They don't start by saying, I need to know what I'm going to make, and then I'll move.
It's about rolling out at scale. If you want to roll out at scale hundreds of thousands of charging points, right? You can't tinker around with a bit of venture capital here and people taking... This isn't The Apprentice. Sorry, Michelle.
Hey, steady on.
OK, fair enough. Look, 250,000 goes a long way, but it's not going to get very far with a lot of electric vehicle charging points. You need to mobilise at scale, and then for a temporary period, not forever. The idea is you get the market going, and the market is established.
So we started getting this going in the 1990s.
So look at the feed-in tariffs have gone down for wind. They've gone down.
But so far, we're still paying green levies for all of this.
The energy price isn't high because of green levies. It's because the market isn't working because we're dependent on gas from Russia or the world market price in gas. There is a global market in gas and oil, and the price is high. And that's why we're paying more money.
But we can't influence that, though. So what we're talking about,
as we move towards renewables, we'll be less dependent on those forms of energy.
And
therefore, it's an investment in the future. It's an investment in security of the future.
And still dependent heavily on gas to make up the difference between a nuclear base load, which I fully support, and which we're rolling
Which the government has to invest in, by the way, even in Sizewell C, $3 billion. Where's that going to come from? It's going to come from these levies.
That's going to come out of the taxpayer. That's going to come out of the taxpayer as well. But you're going to put a regulated asset-based structure in.
Of course. Which means investors can earn a return. Like in any business, if you're an investor, you have to earn a return on the capital that you employ.
In any business, an investor is there to take risk.
Of course, and earn a return, make a profit.
And they may earn a return, and they may not. And that's what's called. That's what.
And you want their return almost guaranteed.
No, I'm not saying it's guaranteed. Look,
the only risk they've got is the upside risk.
I'm saying with the scale of money you need, you can't just rely on venture capitalists to provide it. You also need banks and other investors to come in. How do they come in? They come in, they give loans or debt because they feel that there's some sort of level of certainty in the revenue stream.
I think it's marvellous that the big investors and the people with the subsidies have got a period of certainty they can look forward to. And the only thing the poor bloody consumer has is a period of uncertainty. And that's the world you've created. That's the world you're defending. I'm not.
Well, there you go. James is listening to all of this and he says, Michelle, personally, I couldn't give a hoot about green energy, quite frankly. He says, I would happily have coal power if it just meant cheaper energy. He says, you try living on £325 a month universal credit and paying for prepay electricity and gas. I think your point there, James, is an interesting one because a lot of the people that are on the prepays are the people that unfortunately are struggling the most. And that's what I'm intrigued by. What can the government do in the here and now to help you? Lots of you guys writing in saying Boris is holding stuff back because he wants vote winners, basically. He's going to keep some stuff in his pocket, and once we get closer to a general election, some of you here saying that you feel that is when he's going to start handing out your treats like confetti, but by then, would it be too late for you? Now, I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, the Co-op has removed some use-by dates on their yoghurts, saying that customers should use their common sense to check whether or not food is off by sniffing it. Well, that's great if you've got a sense of smell, but I don't. What about you? Is it sensible, though, given how much we do all waste? Personally, I think we waste far too much food, and pretty much Loads of other stuff as well. We'll have that and more coming up after the break. Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, my panel, Daniel Moylan, who's the former advisor to Boris Johnson and now Tory life peer in the House of Lords, Ali Mirage, the columnist at The Article and founder of the Contrarian Prize, and the author, James Bloodworth. He is not the author of a book about scamming, as I described him earlier on. That's making me chuckle throughout the break, that is for sure. Derek says, Boris is right. We need to get the debits down and build nuclear power stations. I'm all for tax cuts, Michelle, but only when we can afford them in about 500 years or so. OK. Tony says, I've never voted Labour in all my life, but if the only way I can hit Boris for his net zero stupidity is by voting Labour in the May elections, then voting Labour it will be, because net zero must stop. I've got a theory about these May elections, by the way, and again, I do apologise, producer, because I'm going off topic. I get sparked by what I read on here, but I almost think that the Tories... In fact, you know what? No, I'm not going to go off topic. I'm going to stay on topic and I'm going to talk about use by date, shall I? Every single year, 9.5 million tonnes of food are wasted in the UK, and it goes without saying, of course, then that something has to be done. Well, what? The Co-op has decided to scrap use-by dates on all of their own branded yoghurts after it was revealed that half of them have been thrown away unopened. I've got to be honest, I'm surprised. It's as low as half of them. The bosses there have said that we just should use our noses, sniff the yoghurts like what we do with milk, and decide for ourselves when it is best to use. As I was saying earlier, though, thanks to COVID, I've got no sense of smell anymore. So I guess I'm destined to just eat yoghurt that's not quite right then for the rest of my days. Ali, what do you think to this? It is actually a very serious topic, this. The whole kind of... People do just chuck stuff away, and in these kind of tight times, we have to get better at that, don't we?
We do, but I think there's a distinction between the best before date and the use by date.
Indeed.
And I always use them as a guide. I mean, I sometimes buy fruit in these plastic packaging, which actually goes off before the best before date already. You can see the melon sort of getting shiny and, you know, the packaging bubbling up. And it also happens with fruit juices as well, that they can become acidic very quickly. So these are things that are just a guide. I think it's about common sense. If I was to smell milk or a yogurt or something that was, you know, a day or so or a couple of days beyond the best before date, I would still use it. I mean, it's just a commonsensical thing. But I do think that removing it, I'm not in favour of removing it because I do think it is a guide. I think removing it just simply lets the retailer off the hook, notwithstanding the fact that we do go to markets and buy things from stalls and stuff. I get that. But I do think that there's no harm in having this, but I think people should make their own judgments, and I think we should try and obviously all be less wasteful.
James, the UK throws away 9.5 million tons of food waste in a single year. 8.4 million people in the UK are apparently in food poverty. Almost half of this, not just this yoghurt, by the way, almost half of this generally is thrown away due to it being past its use-by date.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to say that I'm someone who does end up wasting yoghurt because I buy yogurts, eat half of it, forget, put it back in the fridge, and then I see the use-by dates passed, and so then I think, oh, I better throw that away. Whereas I think the only use-by dates that really matter are on meat. I think mostly it's only really on meat. I think with yogurts and milk, the smell test is the best way to know if it's off. Certainly with milk. But at the same time, I think we still have COVID here. Some people haven't recovered their sense of smell after having COVID.
Have you?
I didn't lose with Omicron. I didn't lose my sense of smell or taste. It never went away, which meant I could taste Christmas dinner.
For more than 18 months, actually.
I had night sweats for 3 months, but I could smell okay. But I feel like it would be. It wouldn't be very nice on those people who've had COVID and such as yourself who can't do the smell test to take away the use-by dates just yet. I think maybe best before makes more sense on milk and yoghurt, really.
Daniel, are you into these dates? Do you check them on your food?
There are two stories here.
Oh.
The first is, very quickly, all the people who tell you've got to eat healthy food, and all the middle-class people like James who go out and they buy the healthy food.
I'm not
and what we're discovering is, because it's an astonishing statistic, that half the yoghurt pots in the country are thrown away. Unopened. These aren't even the ones that have been left in the fridge, like James has done. He's eaten half of it, at least. These are completely unopened. And what it shows you is that this whole healthy food scam is a middle-class indulgence where you go out and you buy food to feel good and you come home and you throw it away. And that, I think, is... We really ought to reflect on that. What are we doing? Not even the middle classes actually eat this sodding food, the cod liver oil and the whatever else it is, and the yoghurts and all the bio stuff. It all goes in the bin. So that's the first thing. And then they force it on their children. That's why they force it on their children, the middle classes, because they won't eat it themselves and it's going off. The second story is, I think, is about safety. We live in a world which craves safety. So we're constantly looking to experts. We believe there are professionals and experts out there who can tell us what is safe. And these people, they actually tell you that they can tell you what is safe because they make money out of it. That's their job. That's their income. But actually, we live in a really risky world, so we need far more to cultivate our sniff tests and stop relying on labels and things that tell you this is safe and this isn't safe. Nothing is ever really safe. Lots of sniff tests, not just for food, but even about crossing the road. Don't look at the red man, green man, look at the cars, because the cars will kill you, and the red man, green man will only be useful at the post-mortem and the inquiry at the trial.
But isn't that more about, I think compensation culture sometimes. I think that actually lots of things have labels. And I'm going a little bit off topic, but just bear with me because it's linked. Lots of things these days have labels so that people, it's like the allergy ones, for example, food allergies. Yeah. So many labels will now say...
My favourite one is the label they put in the loos on the hot water tap saying the hot water is hot. Caution, the hot water is hot.
But do you...
It's hot. It's really hot.
I really love that
It's really hot, though, sometimes, Daniel.
Yeah. But I do. I think it's so brands.
Mix it with cold. That's what we do with hot water.
In old public schools, you couldn't even mix it, right? There were two taps. You're trying to, catch it.
Right. You fill the bowl, you put the plug in the bowl, and you mix it.
We could say that dairy is too cheap. Dairy farmers have been saying for years that dairy is too cheap. And I think maybe they do have a point. If people are throwing away this much dairy produce, perhaps yogurts and milk are too cheap. Perhaps the dairy farmers are getting a raw deal.
If you stop throwing it away, the farmers will get a terribly raw deal because they go out of business altogether.
So let me test you then, you three. And if you know the answer, don't say it, just in case someone on my panel doesn't know it. 29% of people apparently throw eggs away after their use-by dates, right? So instead of use-by dates, there's a test, you three, that you can do to see whether or not your eggs are fresh. Do you know what it is?
I think so.
Do you? So hang on. So do you know what it is, Ali?
No, I don't.
Daniel, do you know what it is?
I haven't a clue.
Okay.
I would eat the egg, however old it was.
No, you wouldn't. If you found a rogue egg at the back of your fridge...
egg smells rotten. You can't miss it.
What, in its shell?
No, you have to take it out of the shell, but you're going to do something with it, aren't you, before you're going to take it out of the shell.
And you might be hard-boiling it or soft-boiling it, and then it'll be in its thing.
Hard-boiling it takes the smell away. A bad egg smells rotten. You can't miss it.
Making some
so you do it by sniff again. So, James, what is the other test?
I think it's when whether it floats or not.
Yes.
Put it in water.
So,
it's like witches.
So, by the way, just because I've just said about people covering themselves without getting sued, I'm just going to check before I tell you all this test, because what I don't want anyone to do is get salmonella and then start saying, well, she told me on telly to do this. So, yes, what you do is if you put your egg in water, this is what you actually do, and it should, so you get some water in a bowl or a jug or whatever, you put your egg in there, and if it stays at the bottom, then you can eat it. Then you can get a bit more complex on if it goes to a side or whatever, but let's just stay at level 1. If it starts floating to the top, if it comes to the top, yes. So if it floats, it goes in the bin.
Right.
Yes, and if it sinks, then you can eat it. That is...
That's fantastic. Well, that's much better than a sell-by date.
Yes.
To know something useful like that is much better than a sell-by date.
But do you know what I think it is?
Because it makes it your responsibility.
Yeah, and also I think that what we're going to experience an interesting shift to is because, for example, when I was brought up, we didn't have a lot of money. So we did do things like there was no lights left on at all. If you wasn't in a room, the light was off. Like, I don't know, if you had a bit of bread and it had a bit of mould on it, you just cut the bit of mould off the bread, the cheese. So many of these habits. Oh, did you? Well, that might explain a lot, Dan. That might explain a lot.
I'm much older than you, of course.
But I think we might see like a shift, actually, because I think we've ended up in a society where we've got a wasteful society. It's not just with food. We've got things that we want and often don't need. Yeah.
Fast fashion.
Yeah, and I think we might be due a correction. And I think it's quite a long overdue correction. And there'll be people watching this, by the way, that say, what are you talking about? I don't have all this fast fashion. Chance to afford it would be a fine thing. But I think there is a shift coming in the way many of us live our lives. Let me know what you think about that. It's a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about wellness. Hours. Do you get one ever? Do you even get a lunch break? I've got to say, some people watching this, they'll be working all the way through and won't even pause for lunch half the time. But if you work in the Welsh Civil Service, you're in luck, because now you'll be getting a wellness hour once a week to do things like painting, strolling around lakes, all to do with your mental health. Is it a good idea? Should everyone have one? Let me know your thoughts and I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
On Mark Dolan tonight, my Mark Meets guest is the legendary British athlete Fatima Whitbread, who grew up in care homes and made it to Olympic glory. Hear her incredible story at 10. In The Big Question, do you still trust the media? We'll hear from all sides on that one. And in the news agenda with my panel, how worried should we be about the economy? Do you read online reviews? And is it time Britain's women went makeup free? And in my big opinion, I'll be dealing with Prince Harry. See you at 9.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, but to the point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. Welcome back to Dewbs & Co. My panel, Daniel Moylan, who's the former advisor to Boris Johnson, now Tory life peer in the House of Lords. Ali Mirage, who's a columnist at The Article and also a founder of the Contrarian Prize, and the author, James Bloodworth. Lots of you guys getting in touch with me about sell-by dates. Owen says use-by dates are a consumerist invention and they just basically are responsible for lorry loads of waste. Wouldn't disagree with you too much there, Owen. George says nothing is ever wasted in my house. I've got 2 dogs, 2 geese, chickens and a compost heap. So everything goes on there. Nothing, he says, goes in the bin. Peter says my mum has open tins of food in her fridge. I told her once the tomatoes had mould on the top, she should get rid of them. But no, she got a spoon and removed the top layer and said, there you go, it's fine. He says she will be 96 years old in November. Well, there you go then, top tip. Yes, scrape it off. Daniel reckons it's the mould that might be keeping your mum going there. Rob says, Michelle, I threw my kebab at the screen when he, that was you, Ali, said we might just have to suck it up. How dare he? This government could have prevented this from happening years ago. The bit that piqued my interest in all of that, Rob, is that you're having a kebab at 6 on the evening. That is making me very jealous indeed. I tell you, I love how we all go on about use-by dates, and then we go to these takeaways, don't we, and eat the kebabs. And sometimes I think to myself, God only knows what are in some of these kebabs. But anyway, again, I digress. Right, let's talk, shall we, about mental health. 1 in 7 of us will have experienced mental health problems, apparently centring around the workplace. And this is one of the reasons the civil service in Wales has now introduced a wellness hour, allowing all staff to carry out mindful activities once a week. So as I mentioned earlier on, it might be like painting or going for a walk, etc., etc. What do you think to this? By the way, and this has been trialed, this has been piloted initially, and now it's been kind of rolled out. So this isn't like a, one of these. It is a thought out policy. Ali, good idea, wellness hour?
I don't think we need a wellness hour. I think the concept of companies paying attention to the well-being of their staff is important for 3 reasons. One is because it increases productivity. The second is it hopefully allows you to retain your staff longer. And also, thirdly, it reduces or should reduce sickness and absence. So I think it's a good thing to try and encourage your staff to eat healthily, sleep well, move more, etc., drink plenty of water, and to a certain extent to give them help and guidance in that, and perhaps some training. But I don't think that you need to have a stipulated 1 hour to do that. I think that should be done in one's own time. Then people have lunch hours where they can do this sort of stuff. So I'm not in favour of that. But, I think if you want to get a Fitbit from your employer to try and, encourage you to be healthier, it's not something that I've actually... My employer gave me a Fitbit, but I'm still, you can see it hasn't had much impact on me.
I was going to make a comment and then I thought better of it.
That's a personal choice. It's a personal choice. So I believe in freedom of choice. I don't believe it should be stipulated by the employer.
James?
I'm not opposed to the idea, but I think the time would be better spent ensuring that people can actually take an hour's lunch break that they're entitled to. Because I feel like in many companies, people have a lunch break, on the hour's lunch break they're entitled to on paper, but don't feel they can actually take it. They feel like they have to work at their desk. I feel like it would do a lot more for wellness if that was more strictly enforced, the rules that already exist, and they could use their lunch break then to do whatever they like. That would be beneficial to mental health, whether it's go to the gym, whether it is continue working, whether it's go for a walk outside, whatever. I don't feel like it needs to be. You know, in this situation, you could have workers who don't feel they're able to take a lunch break, and then when they do get an extra hour off, they have to do this wellness activity. I feel like if they should decide what they do with their own time, but they should have the time.
So
not feel pressured
they get
not to
their lunch bonus weekly wellness hour.
An hour a week isn't I don't think a big deal, because I think most people nowadays tend not to just clock off exactly on the dot in an office job, for example.
I'm going to have a wellness hour 6 till 7 on a Friday. I think this could have been my wellness hour right now, couldn't it? Daniel, wellness hours at work, yes or no?
I'm so off beam with Ali today. If you listen carefully to what Ali said, the 3 reasons he gave as to why companies should look after mental health, and implicitly, you know, he's a bit
physical as well.
Physical and mental health. Yeah, the 3 reasons were all reasons why it was good for the company. Not one of those reasons was why it was good for the employee. And they were all about reducing staff sickness, getting higher productivity. I can't remember the third one. And what I'm saying is that employment is already sufficiently infantilizing. You get employed and you immediately get reduced mentally to the status of somebody at school. The HR departments are growing and growing in responsibility, increasingly dominating your lives. And this wellness hour is another instance of companies taking over your private life, your communal life, and your activities. And it's highly retrograde in a free society. And if I were offered a wellness hour, I would use it to organise a demonstration against the employer for offering a wellness hour, and just tell them to get right back in their box.
Can I ask you,
this
Daniel?
is my life, and I will make my choices. And I'm not going to make choices to help in my private life, to help your productivity or your staff sickness or whatever else it is, or the certainty of your returns, which are so important to Ali.
So, Ali,
Daniel, can I just ask you?
It's my private life, and I don't care. I walk out the door, I don't care.
Fair enough. But can I ask you, when David Cameron
I bet you please you don't employ Daniel, aren't you?
Daniel's a conservative, but he's been very unconservative when it comes to entrepreneurship. But anyway, the point is on well-being.
No entrepreneurship in your world. It's all subsidies.
On well-being. Were you then not in favour of when David Cameron came to office in 2010 and was going on about measuring general well-being instead of GDP and was coming out with all this stuff? And I chaired a commission for him on it.
I had no idea that you had chaired a commission.
Yes, I had.
So I'm now going to be, instead of calling it total nonsense, I'm going to say
utter nonsense.
I had serious doubts about it, and I say that only out of personal respect for you.
Oh, that's very
kind. If you weren't in this room, I would say it was a load of total rubbish.
But they were really championing it at the time, and citing Bhutan.
They may have been, and Bhutan, exactly.
And happiness,
we are
general
all
happiness.
going to learn from a happiness index in Bhutan. I mean, you might as well just go and join the ashram and give up work altogether. You know, you're back to the 1960s hippies here. Follow the trail to your guru in Bhutan and do a happiness index. Come on. But a serious economy with entrepreneurship, with hard work, with productivity. Those are the things we need to promote. All we hear from you is subsidies for the investors and patronising communal infantilisation for the workers. It's no good, Ali. You've got to get real. Yeah, I mean, you know. I won't go on.
I want you to have a boss, and I want them to offer you an hour a week of wellness paid for, just so that I can see that protest. That would really make me smile. Mike says lunch hour. Michelle, what are you talking about? He agrees with you, James. Since when have most people had a lunch hour? He goes, unless you work for the council, you can forget it. I get 15 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes for lunch, and if you're lucky, you manage to grab a quick brew in the afternoon. Elizabeth says, well, why don't you go and suggest your ideas to Amazon? You know a lot about that, by the way, James, don't you? Because whilst I accidentally made out you wrote a book on scamming, you did write a book in this whole kind of workplace, like the gig
Workers'
economy.
Rights. Yeah, I mean, Amazon, we could hardly take a toilet break, so that was the extreme. A wellness hour would have been welcome, but probably we wouldn't have used it for
you
wellness.
You could have gone to the toilet
Basic
in your
functions,
wellness hour.
and
You could have held it in
use
and
the
put your
toilet.
wellness. Yeah, you could have. Anyway,
It's pretty
again.
critical to wellness, right? To go and.
Yes. Anyway, after all that conversation, I've done this in the wrong order. I've just realised the error of my ways because next coming up is a difficult topic actually. And on reflection, I should have probably done this one first. But domestic abuse when it comes to men, I've got to say, there's real concerns at the moment that this isn't actually taken as seriously as it should be. Now, I do think this is quite a serious topic because I'll give you an example. If a woman has a boyfriend, right, and he's incessantly ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing. If that was one of my friends, she had a boyfriend, he was ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing. We would all be sitting there as her mates going, there's something not quite right there. You know, are you sure everything's all right? If a man has a girlfriend ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing, his friends, correct me if I'm wrong, because I am surrounded by men, are more likely to kind of laugh and joke, ha ha, he's under the thumb, he's under the thumb. So, James, often the warning signs of this are lost and missed, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't think it is taken as seriously when it's a male victim. Firstly, I think for the obvious reason that more victims are female. In terms of domestic violence. But I was stalked by a woman for 2 years and I reported that and it got quite serious. So it was an American woman and the FBI got involved at one point. But initially when I reported it to the police here, the attitude was that you should kind of take it as a compliment, that it was kind of funny, and it felt like as a man I was excluded from the general conversation about stalking, domestic abuse. I think there are cultural reasons why men also are afraid to report these things. I think going to an institution and saying that you've been victimised by a woman as a man, it can feel emasculating because the way people are likely to react to that. So yeah, I don't think it's taken seriously, and I think cultural change needs to take place, and also institutions need to recognise that men can be victims of this too, not just women.
Yeah, and I think often, because of the different physicalities between a man and a woman, generalising I know, but often the man would be the bigger, the physically stronger, the woman would be the smaller, physically weaker. So the two, it's the complete opposite, isn't it, of what people would imagine it to be. Just to give some stats on this, by the way, Ali, you know, it is quite high. So 1 in 6 men, apparently, are going to be a victim of domestic abuse in their lifetime. And I was reading as well, on average, 12 men a year had been killed by a partner. This is in the year, this is up to March 20, from April 15 to March 20. 12 men a year have been killed by a partner or an ex-partner. That's quite staggering, isn't it? Do we take it seriously enough, Ali?
No, I don't think we do, and I think we should. And I think this is coming on the back of a lot of work that's been done following the death of Simon Gilchrist, who was 23.
Yeah, his mum's speaking out.
Yeah, his mum's been speaking out, and he... when you were talking about phone calls, etc., but he was actually killed by his girlfriend. So I think this
is him on the screen, by the way, in case you're watching, not listening.
Yeah, I think his mum has been very open about the fact that she didn't pay enough attention to the telltale signs, and that was something that we should all pay more attention to. So I think she's doing a good job. And 32,000 people in the last year have reported, men have reported issues of domestic abuse. So it's a serious issue.
Daniel, briefly.
Yeah, well, I find myself strangely in agreement with everything Ali's just said, actually, and James.
Oh wow, well that's a nice note to end on, isn't it? A bit unity.
It's a very nice and friendly note to end on, but it should be taken more seriously. It is a serious problem, and generally I'm against sort of murdering people and abusing them.
That is good to hear. That is
irrespective of sex.
Indeed. Suzanne, by the way, you've written in and said, Michelle, please give that man a big pat on the back for the absolute sense he talks. There's a massive flaw in the plan there, Suzanne. Yeah, you've not told me which man. I am surrounded by men, although in this day and age, by the way, I don't even know if I can assume that these days. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to ask you pronouns when you come in the studio, or if you should be wearing a badge, so I make sure that I don't misgender you. But again, I go off topic. Anyway, yes, it's the weekend. That's all from me. James, Ali, Daniel, thank you very much for your company tonight. Thank you for your company at home. Have yourself a fantastic weekend, and I shall see you on Monday.
Hello, good evening. I'm Stephen Keats. I've got your latest Met Office forecast. A bit more cloud for some of us through Friday, and as we go on through tonight, generally speaking, increasing cloud across particularly the south. will be quite windy as well, with an increasing risk of seeing a few showers across the south as this cloud invades in from the near continent and the North Sea through the course of the early hours of Saturday morning. Not mounting to much the showers, but one or two nonetheless. Further north, it's mostly dry and clear for the bulk of northern Britain, but the north of Scotland will continue to hang on to a lot of low cloud half threat here. Chilly in one or two rural glens across Scotland, but most of us not desperately cold. High pressure to the north then on Saturday, low pressure to the south, which means for the vast majority of the UK, it's a brisk east to northeast wind. So going to be quite a gusty old day out there. You'll certainly notice it if you're out and about. And it will be a fairly cloudy start to the day across the southern half of Britain, from about northern England southwards. A few showers around. One or two of these could be quite heavy as we move on through the morning into the afternoon. The odd heavy, possibly thundery one for parts of South Wales, southwest England. Elsewhere, though, plenty of sunshine come the afternoon, again away from the far north of Scotland, where they stay rather grey and misty, and pleasantly warm, although temperatures are notched down on what we saw through the course of today. The breeze will take the temperatures back down that North Sea coast, and also then through Saturday evening will continue to feed in a bit more cloud, as there will be across parts of southern England, English Channel, where another clutch of showers will work their way westwards, ending up across Devon and Cornwall by the early hours of Sunday. Elsewhere, it's a